من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, please recite a second loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, please recite a third final loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
The topic that we have prepared to discuss tonight, and inshallah we will continue with it tomorrow night, is the topic of professionalism in Islam. When we speak about this concept of professionalism, if I wanted to give you just a very brief definition, just so you know what we're talking about as we move on. When we talk about professionalism, or we point to someone and we call them a professional, what we mean is that this person is really good at whatever it is that he is doing. Whatever he does it in the best possible way. This is what we're talking about when we talk about professionalism or being a professional. When you look at the movement of Imam al-Hussein going from the city of Medina, going from there to Mecca, being part of Hajj, and then going from there to Karbala, you find that this idea of the Imam taking his task very seriously, doing his best at whatever it is that he is doing, you see this left and right in his movement. I'll give you 3 or 4 examples and then we will carry on with the discussion. For example, they say that on the night of Ashura, the Imam, because he took this task of imamat and this task of going into the battlefield very seriously, amongst the things that he did on the night of Ashura was that he prayed and he was saying goodbye to his family and things of that nature. And one of the things that he was doing was he was sharpening his sword for the next day that he was going to go into the battlefield. You see that they have given him a task, they have placed a task on his shoulders, and he takes the task very seriously. He doesn't say, well, I'm going to go into the battlefield, we're all going to become shaheed anyway, so might as well just run into the battlefield, they just shoot us down, and it's over with. No, he has a plan, even for how he is going to give up his life. He takes the task very seriously. Or for example, they say that before Imam al-Hussein even started on this journey, he wrote his wasiyah. He planned for after he is martyred. He wrote his wasiyah, he put that in one corner, along with certain texts, along with certain books that he wanted the 4th Imam to have. They say that he took these and he gave these to Salama, one of the famous wives of the Prophet, and he ordered and commanded Salama to hold on to these texts and his wasiyah until the caravan of the Ahlul Bayt goes all the way till Sham and comes back to the city of Medina, and then Salama is supposed to give this to who? To the 4th Imam. You see that the Imam takes his job so seriously that he doesn't sit there and say, well, I'm going to become shaheed anyway, so what's the point? No, he's planning for when, even after his shahadat. Third example, and we will carry on and basically start with the discussion. When you look at Lady Zainab salamullahi alayha, you find that this is an individual who takes her job very seriously. What is her job? What is her role? She is the spokesperson for the cause of Karbala. Like they say in that famous phrase, if it wasn't for Zainab, Karbala would have stayed in Karbala. You find that this lady, she takes her task so seriously that even though she had witnessed 72 of her close family members and companions and friends being massacred and killed and beheaded on the plains of Karbala, even though this is such a horrific scene for her to watch, still after she is walking away from Karbala, she knows what her role is, and anytime she gets the chance to sit down with someone and talk to someone and explain the cause of Karbala to that person, she is not going to let that situation just go away and be wasted. No, she takes her task very seriously, even after going through all of those masa'ib. In Kufa, for example, or in Sham, we find that Lady Zainab has khutbahs and great khutbahs. She changes things around. She comes into a city where people are celebrating that this group of people have been defeated in the plains of Karbala, and when she's leaving, people are crying. So she takes her task very seriously. So you see that this idea of professionalism and taking our task very seriously is something that you see left and right in the movement of Imam al-Hussein. This is on one hand. Recite a salawat, please. This is on one hand. On the other hand, when you look at the culture that we live in here, for example, not just in the United States, but in the West in general, you find that this idea of professionalism is such an important value. It's so deeply embedded in the culture here that sometimes you will come across certain people, what they do is evil. The product or the service that they are producing is evil. It ruins people's lives. But still, when you sit down and talk to that person will take pride in what he's doing. He will say, at least I'm good at what I'm doing. Even though what he's doing is evil, still he takes pride in it. Why? Because he feels like he's good in terms of what he does. This idea of professionalism is so important that people are willing to travel for thousands of miles. They are willing to leave their home country, their families, their loved ones, and travel for thousands of miles to do what? To come, for example, to a country like this, just as an example, to be able to study in a professional environment, or to be able to work in a professional environment, right? To perfect that profession that they are learning. This is how valuable it is. Sometimes you will see, and I've certainly come across many students, for example, in Iran, where this student is willing to do anything and everything so that he can be accepted in this particular school, for example, in this particular Western country. Why? Because that particular school has created a professional environment for him to come and to study and perfect this profession that he is trying to do. And many of us, for the younger guys, our parents, many of them, it's not like they were in love with the society here that they moved here. No, it was because of this professional environment. This is why they were willing to leave their home country behind and travel and come. So you see that this, when you create a professional environment, how important it is going to be in the society. And because of this, it is important for us to sit down and see whether Islam has an opinion regarding this concept or not. What does Islam have to say about this? So we are going to boil down tonight's discussion into 4 main questions. These are the 4 main questions that we will try and strive to provide answers for, inshallah. Number 1, when we call someone a professional, what exactly are we trying to say about this person? What are the characteristics that make someone a professional? This is number 1. Number 2, what is Islam's opinion in this regard? What does Islam have to say about this? In other words, do we have such a thing as a Muslim professional from an Islamic perspective or not? Is it that Islam teaches us anything about this at all? Or Islam doesn't even have an opinion about this? That's number 2. Number 3, when we talk about professionalism, what is it that the Islamic perspective teaches us about this concept that the Western culture can never teach you and me? There is a missing ingredient in the Western ideology when it comes to this idea of professionalism that Islam puts a lot of emphasis on, but the West cannot teach you this particular point. This makes the Islamic perspective superior to the Western ideology. And number 4, and the final question, is what examples do we have from the lives of our ulama and our scholars who were able to show and display professionalism at the highest levels of it. Sometimes we had in the lives of our scholars individuals, they would set goals, and I'll give you examples of this. They would set goals for themselves, and regardless of the obstacles that were put in front of them, this person would not stop until he would make sure that that goal is achieved. These are the 4 questions that we will discuss tonight. Inshallah. Recite Allah salawat. So let's start from here. What is Islam's opinion in regards to this concept? Does Islam have anything to say about this? Usually, brothers and sisters, the new generation that is coming up, or people who are not well informed about Islam, when they want to see if Islam has anything to say about a particular issue, what do? They go look for that particular term in Islamic texts. So like the brother here, he wants to see what Islam has to say about professionalism. So what is he going to do? He's going to go search, Google, right? Professionalism in Islam. Just wait to see if anything pops up in the Quran. And he searches and searches, and then he comes back, he says, guess what? I read the Quran cover to cover. you won't even find this word professionalism in it. Islam has nothing to say about professionalism. Why? Because he's looking for a particular term. So you need to break down this term, exactly see what is it exactly that we're talking about. What characteristics are we talking about? Once you do that, then you'll see if Islam has anything to say about this particular term. If you break down this term of professionalism, you will see there are 4 main characteristics in it. Number 1, when we call someone a professional, it means that this person, in terms of the work that he puts into his task or his project, he goes above and beyond expectations. Sometimes you will come across people like this. A lot of entrepreneurs are like this. When they give them a task, this person doesn't care if anyone's watching or not. No, he will put in work, in hours and hours of work. Not just to survive and to get by. No, he will put enough work that even if no one is watching, he will put extra work into his project. This is the first characteristic. Second characteristic of this person, he is not easily distracted from the work that he is taking care of. If you want to come and waste his time when he's taking care of his work, he's not going to pay attention to you. If you come to him and he has a lecture to prepare, and you come and say, oh, let's have fun, let's spend some time. He's not going to have fun with you. He says, no, I have to focus on the work that I'm taking care of. Number 3, this person who is a professional, when he gives a promise, this is a very important one. When he gives a promise and he gives his word, he is able to follow up on it. He is able to keep his word and promise. Third characteristic. And the fourth characteristic, and this one is probably my favorite, is that this person, even the smallest things that he does them in such a nice and beautiful way that sometimes you just want to sit there and watch him doing what he does. Sometimes it's even the daily things that he's doing, the routine things, mundane things that he's doing. But he does it in such a nice and neat fashion that you just want to sit there and watch this person. And I'll give you examples of that as well. These 4 characteristics, when we find these 4 characteristics in a particular individual, we point to that person and we say this person is a professional. Now that we have broken down this term, now you can see that Islam has a lot to say about professionalism. Because now you have broken down this term, you know exactly what it is that you're talking about. Before you were just using a term that's only been used for the past 200 years. Now you're talking about characteristics that have been there throughout the life of humankind. So then you go to Islam. Islam has a lot to say about each and every one of these characteristics. Inshallah, tonight we will discuss the first one, and tomorrow night the last 3, inshallah. Recite salawat, please. So the first characteristic, this person, he puts in more work than is expected of him. Even if there's no one there watching him and following up on his work, he's going to put extra work into this project that he's taking care of. Let's go to Islam and see what Islam has to say about this. By the way, brothers and sisters, the reason why I am taking your time to discuss a topic like this is because today in Muslim communities and in Muslim countries, there is a very unfortunate fact. That unfortunate fact is this. Anytime a Muslim does something, you automatically know, and this is very embarrassing and we should be ashamed of this, but anytime a Muslim does something, automatically you know that there are flaws in what he is doing. But then if you want to say that a work was done, it was done without flaws, you will describe it with words like calling it Western. This issue has become such an issue in our communities that Western equals what? Professional work. Eastern, Oriental, work done back home. What does that mean? That means that that's the type of work that you cannot rely on. And that's one of the reasons why our communities are the way they are here in the United States, in the West. And this is also a reason why our countries are the way they are, unfortunately, compared to some of the other countries that we have out in the world. Because this idea of professionalism is not taken seriously. So please pay attention. This is a very important topic that I am taking your time with. What does Islam teach us about the first characteristic, meaning that you're supposed to put in a lot of work. Whatever it is you're taking care of, you go above and beyond expectations. Let's look at the life of the Prophet. When we go to the life of the Prophet, we find that in the first project that the Prophet was dealing with, you find how much work this man was putting into this project. The first project that the Prophet had to deal with was building the first masjid in the world of Islam. This was not Masjid al-Nabi, this was another masjid by the name of Masjid al-Quba, outside of the city of Medina. This is, of course, I'm calling it the first project just because when the Prophet was in Mecca, he was being pressured and his companions were being tortured. So you can't really say he was dealing with a project per se. But when he moved to Medina, now he's trying to build a Muslim community. He's trying to put together projects for this Muslim community. And so you can call this the first project of the Prophet. They say when they were building this Masjid al-Quba, this first masjid of Islam, the masjids back then, of course, they were built in a very simple way. They had mud, and they had these mud bricks. You put a mud brick, for those of you who may not be very familiar with the process, you put the mud brick, and then you slap what on it? You slap mud on it, and then you put the next mud brick. They say the Prophet, sometimes he would pick up these mud bricks, and he would help out with the mud bricks. Sometimes he would take the mud itself, he would slap it on, and they saw that the Prophet is working just as hard as everyone else is working. And so some of the companions came to the Prophet, who was working in the heat of Saudi Arabia. They came to him, they said, Ya Rasulullah, our hands are empty. Why don't you just hand the mud bricks over to us? These are heavy mud bricks. These are not the bricks that you guys have here. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about very heavy bricks. They said, our hands are empty. You give the bricks to us. What did the Prophet say? How did the Prophet approach this issue? Did he say, yes, you know what? I just got out of Mecca. I barely made it out of Mecca. Why don't you guys take care of this project? I'll sit back at home. I'll settle down for 6 or 7 months, and then after that, I'll come and I'll help you guys. No, they say the Prophet said that if your hands are empty, then go grab an extra one so that we can get done with this project faster and sooner. The Prophet is trying to build a community for thousands of years to come. From the very beginning, he is going to show that when a Muslim does work, he's supposed to go above and beyond expectations in terms of how much effort and work he puts into the job that he is taking care of. Recite salawat, please. A couple points about the importance of working in Islam. And let me mention this point from the very beginning. When we talk about work, brothers and sisters, we are not talking specifically about the work that the brothers do, neither are we talking specifically about the works that our sisters do. No, this is a general concept. That's number one. Number two, when I say work, we are not necessarily referring to the idea of work that's known in this society that means working in some corporation or in the business world. No, I mean being active and producing a product or a service that others can benefit from. Sometimes that might be raising your own children inside of the house. That's work as well. That's very difficult work. For the brothers who may not know, it's very difficult when you have 3 children on your hands. Each one of them is running into one corner. Each one of them is putting his hand into one electrical socket. And you have to watch all 3 of them at the same. That's not work that we can do. We just saw the brother here. He was struggling with 2, let alone with 3. So when we're talking about work, don't get me wrong and think only the corporates. And no. We're talking about producing a product or service that your family or your community can benefit from. And it can come in multiple shapes and forms. What does Islam teach us about this work? There are 2 points that I want to mention and we will move on. Number 1, and this is one line so you have to pay attention so you can get it. Islam teaches us that work is not just a goal. You will forgive me, I started the line wrong. Recite salawat, please. Islam teaches us that work is not just a means to make money. It's a goal in and of itself. What does that mean? When you call something a means, a tool, it means that it's not important. You're just doing it because you're trying to achieve something that is important, right? When you're eating with a fork, the fork isn't important. You just want the food to go into your mouth. Islam teaches us that working is not just a tool for you to make enough money so that you don't starve to death. No, Islam says working is a goal. Meaning that if you, na'udhu billah, God forbid, you take part in the lottery one day and you win the lottery. Huh? You win the lottery, which means that you have millions of dollars. Which means that you don't really have to work for the rest of your life. Still Islam says you have to work. Still Islam says you have to be productive. Working is not just a means so you don't starve to death. In our communities, in our cultures, when we teach our children about work, what do we say? We say, Baba John. Right. We have more Iranians here. I usually do the Desi one, but we have more Iranians here, so I'll do the Farsi one. I say, Baba John, Bad kar koni. Or we say, Beta John, you have to work. Why, Baba? Why do I have to work? Because if you don't work, if you don't have a college degree, for example, then you'll starve to death. You won't have money to provide for your family. And then this child learns what? That I have to work because I have to provide. The moment I don't have to provide anymore, then forget about it. I don't have any responsibility. Job, working, being productive, being efficient, that's only for you to survive so that you can provide for your family. The moment that's done, you don't have to be worried. You don't have to worry about that anymore. But when you look at the Ahlul Bayt, is that they did not teach it this way. One of the companions of the sixth Imam, Imam Sadiq salawatullah alayhi, he came to spend time with the sixth Imam, and the sixth Imam saw him. His name was Ma'ad. He said, Ma'ad, I've heard that you stopped working. And he asked him, he said, is it because you have like a medical condition or a disability that you're not able to work anymore because you used to work? Something happened to you, or is it just a decision that you made not to work anymore? He said, no, Ja'far ibn Muhammad, I've decided not to work anymore. And in my wording, this is of course my wording, not what anything mentioned in the hadith, maybe he was thinking that right when he says this, Ja'far ibn Muhammad is going to do what? He's going to start lecturing him on what? On that you have to provide for your family, you're the husband, you have to provide the income, things like that responsibility. So before the sixth Imam can even start lecturing him on this stuff, what did he say? He said, listen, let me tell you something. I have enough money and wealth that I don't have to work for the rest of my life, and my children will be comfortable as well. What do you say now? Of course, none of this is in the hadith, that's just my understanding. What did the sixth Imam say? The sixth Imam said, I'm sorry, you have to go back to work tomorrow morning. He said, no, apparently you didn't hear me. I said, we have enough wealth. He said, no, I know, I heard you. But the thing is, when you don't work, your brain also does not function. And you don't want that to continue for a very long time. You don't want that. You don't want to sit there and do nothing. You don't want that. Islam teaches us that working and being productive, it is a goal in and of itself. Recite a salawat, please. Having understood this idea of retirement, I hate to break it to some of the brothers here, this idea of retirement that we have here, in this sense, in this particular sense, that when you retire, you go sit back and you don't do anything for the rest of your life. Like, forgive me, the way they speak of retirement here, so you go, you sit, and you don't do anything. So what are you going to do? You're just going to be a vegetable for the rest of your life? The way they speak of it here, Islam does not believe in this. Islam does not believe in retirement in the sense that you go, you sit, and you do nothing for the rest of your life. No. Islam believes that when you retire, you change your hours, for example, the type of work that you do. Maybe you spend time some other work that you like to do. Maybe there's some reading, some writing you want to do. Whatever work you want to do. But Islam does not allow you to just sit there and do nothing with your life. You want to change the way you do your work? Your age is going up. You need more time to rest. You need more time with your family. That's great. That's wonderful. That's what retirement is for. But the idea that I'm just going to sit there from morning all the way till nighttime and do nothing, Islam does not believe in that, in this retirement, in this sense of the word. And then you find in the lives of our ulama, they also taught us that this does not exist. For example, I'll give you an example of the life of Imam Khomeini. Imam Khomeini, brothers and sisters, he started the whole revolution and everything that took place, regardless of your political opinions. If you just want to look at this person from a social perspective, he started his whole thing when he turned 40. If you're successful in this country, you retire when you're 40. Like if you're really successful, you can retire when you're 40, and then you can go and boast about it to people. And you're like, oh, I retired when I was 40. Okay. He started when he was 40. When did he end? He didn't end until he breathed the last breaths of his life. They say during the last moments of his life, he had a heart condition, and doctors were working on his heart, and so he was fainting and he was coming back. And sometimes when he would come back, the Iranian Revolution was being revised at that time. He would come back, he would ask the doctors, say, did they revise the revolution? Are they revise the constitution, forgive me. Are they done with revising the constitution yet or not? This is a man who's over 80 years of age. We don't believe in this idea of retirement in the sense that you just sit there and you don't do anything for the rest of your life. No. You adapt to your age, of course, but still, you have to be productive. You can't be a burden on the community. Not when you're 80 years of age. Sometimes, we'll set that apart. Sometimes even you will find brothers and sisters, a brother or a sister, you ask them, brother, sister, what are you doing? Say, oh, alhamdulillah, I just graduated. Okay, so what are you doing? I'm taking a gap year. You know what a gap year is fine. If you're really taking a gap year, that's fine. There's a lot of things that a gap year can do for you. But you know what gap year means today? It means a lot of YouTube and a lot of TV. That's what a gap year means today. If you're taking a gap year in the sense that, oh, it's a gap year, what does that mean? I'm just wasting my whole year. We don't believe in that. You want to take a gap year from your studies? Perfect. Have another plan for what you're going to do with your life in that 1 year. Be productive. Come up with a product, a service, something that you can use later on. So this idea of just sitting back, they teach our children here that it's a fantasy. If you can live that life where you just sit back and do nothing. No, that's not something that we believe in that particular sense of it in Islam. And so I will end, inshallah, this particular part of the discussion with this. No one has said it better than the verses of the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to the Prophet in Surah Al-Inshirah, one of the surahs in the 30th chapter, he says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm not going to lecture for you for 45 minutes like this Shaykh is doing. No, I'll make it very short, very simple for you. فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْسَبْ. When you're done, when you become farigh means that your hands are empty. When your hands become empty, fansab, get up and get on with the next task. There's no waiting around and sitting and, oh, okay, for the next year I'm going to waste my time. No, the Quran has not approached this issue in this way. This is the first point that we understand about work in Islam, that it is a goal and not just a means. Let's move on to the second point that we can understand about how hard we are supposed to push ourselves in Islam. The second point, brothers and sisters, is this. It starts from a very fundamental principle that we have in Islam. There's a very fundamental principle we have in Islam, and that principle is this. If someone that you are related to, or someone you are connected to, if they do something wrong, you are not going to be held accountable for it. Right? That's something we believe in Islam. That your mom and dad may have been, for example, God forbid, the worst people on earth. God is not going to ask you about what your mom and dad did. They're going to ask you about what you did. وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. That's what we believe in. You know what the problem is, brothers and sisters? There's a flip side to that coin. There's another side to that principle. What is that other side? That you also cannot take credits for the good work that other people have done. This is very important. What happens a lot of times, brothers and sisters, in our lives is that instead of trying to look at our own work, how much we have done, how much effort we have put to push ourselves closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what we do is we take credit for something that, for example, our mothers or fathers did. Sometimes your grandpa made a decision that changed the life of your father, and because of that your life was changed, and then you sit there and you say, MashaAllah, what a great person am I. Since I was 5 years old, I grew up Muslim environment, Muslim family. I was always Sunday school, Quran competition. I was number one. Alhamdulillah, the majalis. Is that stuff that you can take at least all of the credit for? No. That's other people who put in a lot of hard work. And I'm the first one to confess to it. If I came into this career, for example, can I take all of the credit for it? No. His parents did so much work to place you in the right environment, to teach you the right things. Why is this important? Because when you look at your life and where you are, and then you subtract the work that other people have done for you, then you see how empty your hands are. Then you see that the work that you have put in, it's really not that much. When you take away the credit that other people have done. Islam teaches us, you're not going to be held accountable for the wrong things that other people do. وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. But you also can't take the credit of the good work of other people. وَأَنْ لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter for Him if you start at -2, at 0, or +10. And some of us started at +10. No, what matters for Him is how much you're going to push yourself forward from that point. Recite a salawat, please. Because the Prophet showed so much importance to this idea of working and working hard at whatever project or task it is that we are taking care of, you find that when he was building this Muslim community, any time or any opportunity he would get, he would come across a person who was working hard, he would shower that person with compliments. And I will mention a story and then we will move on to an example from the life of one of our ulama, one of my favorite scholars that is less known, unfortunately. We will move on to that. They say the Prophet was coming back from one of the battles that he had. This was the Battle of Tabuk. Battle of Tabuk was not so much of a battle because the Muslims didn't really fight in it. They just sent out a group because another group was going to attack them, and then they were dispersed and they headed back towards the city of Medina. So the Prophet was returning back to the city of Medina, and one of the things that was customary during that time is that people would come out of the city to welcome the Prophet back into the city of Medina. So they say a group of Muslims came back out of the city of Medina to welcome the Prophet back into the city, and they say the Prophet, with each one of these Muslims, he started to hug them, shake hands with them, and hug them, right? Musafaha, mu'anaqa, which are all mustahab in Islam. And he was doing this with these individuals until he did it with one of the men. And he shook hands with one of these men. And when he shook the hands of one of these men, he paused for a second. And he said, wait a second, your hands are very rough and tough. The hands of men back then, rough and tough. Not like the brothers today, that the hands are too soft sometimes. So real men who used to do real work. Recite salawat, please. The Prophet shook the hands of this man. He saw the hands of this man is too rough and tough. He said, is this a medical condition that you have? Or is it something else that your hands are so rough and tough? He said, no, Ya Rasulullah, it's not a medical condition. It's just that I work with ropes and tools so much during the day that my hands, they have blisters and then, it becomes rough and tough over time. This is why my hands have turned like this. It's because I work so hard. And the Prophet, what did he do? Did he stand there and say, oh, that's very good, but guess what? We just came back from a battle, so which one is more difficult, do you think? Is that the approach that the Prophet took? No. They say the Prophet bent down. Pay attention to this. Let this sink in. Because this is a very big thing the Prophet is doing. They say the Prophet bent down and kissed the hands of this man. And then he pointed to his ashab. He said, listen, these are the hands that hellfire will never touch. Why? Because the Prophet knows that as much as this Muslim ummah needs people to go out and defend it, it also needs people who are professionals and hardworking individuals and are able to build the community. He knows that you need people to defend it, but you also need people to build this community. And the only way to do that is to show how important it is in Islam to put in a lot of work into whatever task or project it is that you are working on, and to be a professional in that regard. This is the first characteristic out of the 4 characteristics that someone has when we point to them and we say this person is a professional. I'm going to end, inshallah, with one example from the lives of one of our scholars who showed us truly what a professional is supposed to look like. Recite a salawat, please. There is one of our ulama and scholars, and he is one of the less known scholars out there. His name is Ayatollah Mar'ashi Najafi. And the reason why I wanted to talk about him is because he's less known. I wanted to introduce him. Ayatollah Mar'ashi Najafi, of course his name says Najafi, so he was from Najaf, of course. And later on he moved to Iran. He has a very famous library in the city of Qom. If you've been to the shrine of Lady Ma'asuma, 50 or 100 feet away from the shrine, there's a famous library. So they call it, of course, the library of Ayatollah Mar'ashi Najafi. Now, many people, they might walk past by this library. They might not understand the significance of this library. This library, brothers and sisters, is the greatest library of handwritten books in all of Iran. And the third greatest library of handwritten books in all of the Muslim world. That's a huge population we're talking about. The third greatest library of handwritten books. Many people think that they just named the library after this individual, like you know how they name like streets and alleys after this shaheed or that, that scholar. That's not what happened. Ayatollah Mar'ashi Najafi put this library together with his own work. So why did he do this? Was he in love with books, for example? No. He was living in the city of Najaf. Pay attention to what he observed, brothers and sisters. This is a person that we call a professional at what he does. He was living in the city of Najaf. What he starts to observe in the city of Najaf is that there are British businessmen on behalf of the British consulate. They come and they walk around in the bazaars in Najaf. And what do? They go around to people and they buy the handwritten books that people are selling. This is a book, for example, that this guy's grandfather wrote, for example. He doesn't understand the value of it. It's just like something my grandfather wrote. It's not that important. His grandfather may have been a great scholar, but this person is trying to make money to buy some food for today. So he's willing to sell his handwritten book for the cheapest price. So these businessmen would come and they would buy these books and they would take them back to Britain so that when our children grow up, you want to teach them about Islamic heritage, you have to go all the way to Britain to teach them about Islamic heritage. Ayatollah Mar'ashi Najafi, he sees this, he observes this. He says, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to go and figure out how to make enough money so that I can go and buy these books before these businessmen can come around and start buying these books and taking it away from the Muslim Ummah. But this is a library that has been put together by one individual. There's no government supporting this guy. There is not even a community of people supporting this guy. He's on his own. But a professional does not stop there. So what does he do? He says, well, I don't have the money. I'm going to figure out how to come up with enough money to go around and buy these books before these businessmen can get to these books. So what does he do? He starts cutting costs from his day-to-day life. Still the money is not enough. He cuts out one of his meals. He's only doing 2 meals a day now. Still the money is not enough. He starts working in a workshop at night after all of his studies are done during the day. A workshop where they used to grind rice to turn it into flour. He goes works there. Still the money is not enough. He takes on fasting and praying from the deceased. Until he has enough money to go and buy these books one by one, until Ayatollah Mar'ashi Najafi, he buys 1,000 handwritten books and he puts together this library that has now become part of the Islamic heritage in the city of Qom. Initially he was in Najaf and then later on he moved to the city of Qom. Very interesting point, and with this we will end inshallah. Every single one of these books that Ayatollah Mar'ashi Najafi has bought, because he knows that the next generations will probably come and not understand how much effort he has put into preserving this heritage. Every one of these that he has bought, when you open the cover, inside the cover, he has written how he was able to come up with the money to buy this book. And one of the books, when you open this book, he says, I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he gave me the chance to raise enough money to buy this book. This book I am buying with 2 years of extra fasting and extra praying. 2 years. Extra fasting and extra praying. And that's how I bought this book. And it's been 20 hours since I have not eaten anything. And then he continues, he says, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant the hajat of everyone. Meaning, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also give me something to eat. This is a man who has not eaten anything for 20 hours. And when he says, I'm not eating anything, doesn't mean it hasn't had a full meal. No, this is a person, he's saying, I haven't had anything. But you see, he is such a professional that when he sets a goal for himself, he's willing to deal with any obstacles that are on his path to be able to achieve that goal. If we don't call that professional, brothers and sisters, I don't know what we would call professional. With that, inshallah, we will end tonight's talk. If the brothers and sisters can turn off the lights and dim the lights, we will hear the masa'ib of our beloved second Imam. Let us take our hearts, brothers and sisters, to the city of Medina, the city that after the Prophet has passed away, has become a city of sorrow, a city of sadness, a city of gham. After the Prophet has passed away, the masa'ib and the difficulties of the Ahlul Bayt have been unbearable. This is why Fatima Zahra, she says, Subbat alayya al-masa'ib, all of the masa'ib and all of the calamities were thrown my way, that if all of these masa'ib were thrown towards anyone else, their day and night would turn dark from sadness and sorrow and difficulty. The city of Medina is no longer the city that it was when the Prophet was alive, the joyous and happy city during that time. Let us take our hearts, brothers and sisters, to the house of Hasan ibn Ali, this beloved Imam of ours. They say that one of the narrators, one of the people who did not have strong faith in imamat and in his Imam, the narrator of this hadith, he says that one day I was very upset at Imam al-Hasan. I wanted to go and protest and yell at him and tell him, why did you give this khilafah to Muawiyah? Why did you allow Muawiyah to take on this khilafah and to have authority over the Muslim ummah? He says, I knocked the door and I entered the house of Hasan ibn Ali, and before I could even start my discussion with Hasan ibn Ali, I started to blame him for everything. I said, Hasan, it's because of you that now the Muslims are in the place that they are. You are the one who was lazy. You are the one who did not do his role and his job. And because of this, now Muawiyah has authority over us. He says that when I was talking to Hasan ibn Ali, I was disrespecting him. I was calling him a coward. I was blaming him for anything and everything. And I was talking to him in a very harsh manner. And then he says, as I continued, then Hasan ibn Ali started to respond. He said, listen, if Muawiyah has khilafah over the Muslim ummah right now, it's not because I gave him khilafah, it's because I was alone, because I was gharib, there was no one to help me. Otherwise I would have fought him. I would not have given him khilafat in this fashion. And then he says that as the Imam continued to respond, all of a sudden I saw that the Imam started to cough and cough. And his coughing got worse and worse until a point came where I saw that while he is coughing, there is blood that is also coming out of the throat and out of the body of Hasan ibn Ali. And I turned towards him, I said, Ya Hasan, what's going on? Why are you coughing up blood? He said, the same person that you think I gave the khilafah to, he is the one who has put poison in my food. And now because of that, this poison, it has done something to my body that I cannot cure it anymore. I told him, Ya Hasan, go ask the doctors to come up with a cure for you. He said, no, I am at a point that this cannot be cured anymore. In some of the other traditions we read that Hasan ibn Ali, he continued to cough, and then Imam al-Hussein came into the room and he says that I could see my brother was coughing and parts of his liver, parts of his flesh were also leaving his mouth as he was coughing. And I knew that Hasan had no coming back from this. I knew that these were the final moments of the life of my brother. He says that I embraced Imam al-Hasan, and I started to kiss his forehead and embrace him. We tell him, Ya Imam al-Hasan, at least there was someone for you when you were martyred, when you were leaving this world. For them to embrace you, at least you had someone from your family around you, Ya Imam al-Hasan. In the plains of Karbala, let me tell you, there was no one to embrace Abu Abdullah. There was no one to embrace Imam al-Hussein. In the plains of Karbala, Zainab has to stand far away as the enemies will throw spears, they will throw arrows, they will use swords to hit and wound Hussein ibn Ali. And Zainab, she cannot run into the battlefield to embrace Hussein ibn Ali. There was one person who ran into the battlefield to embrace Hussein ibn Ali, and that was the yatim of Hasan, the son of Hasan, Abdullah ibn Hasan. He ran into the battlefield. Hussein had told Zainab that morning, Zainab, you know that when I fall from the horse in the battlefield and these people surround me and they circle me, be aware that Abdullah is not going to just stand there and watch. He is going to run into the battlefield to be with me, to embrace me. And that's why the hadith says that Zainab was holding on to Abdullah ibn Hasan very hard. But then when he saw that his uncle is in the battlefield and people are hitting him and wounding him with swords and spears and arrows and some with rocks even, the hadith says, فَنَازَعَهَا نِزَاعًا شَدِيدًا. He started to run away from Zainab, and imagine Zainab watching this child run into the battlefield. Imagine Hussein on the ground watching Abdullah ibn Hasan come into the battlefield. He knows that when Abdullah makes his way into the battlefield, there is no more way of Abdullah going back after this. And he was calling out, Wallah la ufariqu ammi. By Allah, I will not leave my uncle alone. I won't let you just kill my uncle. Just like that, they say that Abdullah ran into the battlefield, and before he could embrace Abu Abdullah, someone wanted to attack him, and he tried to defend himself, and the sword cut off the hand of Abdullah ibn Hasan, this young child. Imagine the pain of Hussein when he is lying alone in this desert, and his yatim niece is there with him. Abdullah ibn Hasan is bleeding. Abdullah had come to embrace Hussein, but now Hussein is embracing Abdullah. He is saying, Abdullah, be patient. Know that the pain will go away soon. Soon you will meet your real father, Hasan ibn Ali. Ala la'natullah ala al-qawm al-zalimin. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He blesses all of us with the chance and the opportunity and the tawfiq to be amongst the true followers of the Ahlul Bayt, inshaAllah. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He blesses all of our brothers and sisters who are sick with health and afiyah, inshaAllah. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He blesses all of our ulama and all of our maraja and all of our scholars with long lives, inshaAllah. And finally, last but not least, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that amongst all of the hawa'ij and the requests and the du'as that all of the people here and all of the people who wanted to be here have, that He answers all of these hawa'ij, and amongst them, and probably the most important of them, the hastening of the return of our beloved 12th Imam bin Nabi wa alih. Rahimallahu man qara'a al-Fatihata ma'a as-salawat.